Well, welcome everybody to the October meeting of the Zonta Says NOW Intercontinental think tank. My name is Carole Theobald, and I have the privilege of leading the International Zonta Says NOW working group. I'm hosting the meeting today from Western Australia, and it is 2 o'clock in the morning, so bear with me. Please remember to keep your microphone on mute during presentations, and you're welcome to ask questions in the chat or make comments in the chat line. We will be recording today's meeting, but the conversations in the breakout rooms will not be in the final recording. Well, we've got quite a full program today, so we will begin. We're delighted to welcome you all, especially first-timers to the think tank. And please use the chat line to say hello and where you are from and your local time. Each month, we highlight a United Nations International Day. And today is the International Day of Rural Women. Did you know that on average, women make up more than 40% of the agricultural labor force in developing countries, ranging from 20% in Latin America to 50% or more in parts of Africa and Asia. But less than 15% of landholders worldwide are women. In some countries, over 50% of girls from poor rural households will be married as children. So I was saying that it's the International Day of Rural Women. And 50% of girls from poor rural households will be married as children. The UN Women Report, Global Gender Impacts of the Ukraine Crisis, shows how the war in Ukraine has had a devastating impact on women and girls worldwide, widening gender gaps and increasing rates of food insecurity, malnutrition, and energy poverty. This report calls on us all to promote women's participation, leadership, and decision-making, and ensure food availability and energy access for women and girls and their communities everywhere. We'll talk more about this later, as food security is the theme of the main presentations today. Our Intercontinental think tank is coordinated by our Zonta Says NOW working group, and various members will be helping with today's meeting. I'll now ask Bobby Cardillo from the USA to explain why Zonta Says NOW.
Well, it's good at the beginning to remind ourselves each time why Zonta Says NOW to gender equal climate action. And Carole has given us this lovely picture of the train, the steam train, in order to remind us that this train comes from the era of the Industrial Revolution. And that's a time when humans first started to create greenhouse gas emissions and put them up into the atmosphere. So click. And they've created a blanket over the earth. And this is what's causing the global warming that we've seen. And because of that, we have lots more extreme weather events. And we've certainly seen that in this past year. Things like floods and wildfires, really all over the globe, and extreme heat, extreme cold, storms, hurricanes, typhoons, what have you. All of this triggers social disruption. People start to lose their homes. People lose sometimes their livelihoods. They lose all their belongings. They lose their money, their source of money. And this, of course, magnifies whatever gender inequality was there to begin with. And we know there was a lot there to begin with, but it gets worse. We have things like child marriage and human trafficking. So Zonta Says NOW is an effort by all of us to stop this train by taking climate action and helping to close this gender gap. We do this with 3 tools. And the first of them is our website, and this is on zonta.org. And if you click in the little box, search box, and you type in Zonta Says Now, you can come right to this page that you see in front of you. And lots of good information there. The second tool we've created is these think tanks. And this gives you an opportunity, if you're new to learning about gender equal climate action, gives you an opportunity to learn all kinds of things from others around the globe. And then the third and very important tool is our framework for action, which lays out a 5-step plan. First of all, gathering the facts, and then leading by example. And then we use our voice, we advocate, and we collaborate with others in taking this action. It's a very important tool for us to use in our clubs as we think about what we're going to do. And lots of other resources are also available on the website. So this is what is there for you at the moment. And there are many links on our website to other resources like District 23's resources, District 12's, and so forth. So do go look for that. But in the meantime, I'm going to call on Pia Hultgren from Sweden, who's going to tell us a little more about what's happened since our last meeting a month ago. Pia.
Thanks, Bobby. So yes, this is what we have been doing since the last meeting. Our 3 Zonta Says Now surveys closed at the end of September, and we received 611 responses from members, 35 from club presidents, and 21 from district governors. Carole will share the results of the members' survey at the end of this meeting. Then we have our social media team, and we will have our first meeting on Tuesday with Kate Edrin, a communication specialist from Zonta International headquarters. And she will help us to set up some procedures to go on with, to publish things on social media that is connected to this task. And many of you will have been at district conferences or are going to in the coming weeks. And in our country, we had it in the spring. That's a bit weird, but anyway. And many presentations have been demonstrated the connections between more frequent extreme weather events and increasing gender inequality. And then, of course, Julie, we have our virtual art gallery, and it's now open for business. Thank you for managing this wonderful thing. And you can have a look at this webpage whenever you want. And please share this information with your fellow Zontanians. The virtual art gallery is not a competition, and entry is free. We want Zontians to be able to express how they feel about the climate change and its impacts on gender equality. So artwork can be of any type. Paintings, sculptures, and music, you name it. Maybe some small video clips. You only submit a digital image of your artwork with a short description of what it is about. It's so easy. The first round of entries closes on 15th December, so please spread the word in the world. We also have some opportunities for you to be more involved in Zonta Says Now. Please indicate your interest in the chat line here. If you have website skills or a passion for the arts, would you like to help with a virtual art gallery maybe? We're keen to present at the NGO CSW 68 in March next year. Would you like to help create and deliver a presentation? The theme is accelerating the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls by addressing poverty and strengthening the institutions and financing with a gender perspective. Very interesting and important. Are you keen on investigation and research? We need a few people to form an alliances team. We need the team to find out what organizations share our mission and values and recommend who we could form an alliance with and why. And then don't forget that Zonta International is forming committees for the 2024 to 26 biennium, so you may want to register your interest. The link will be accessible from the PDF of the slides from today's meeting. So please consider these opportunities and help to develop Zonta Says Now. I will now hand over to Angela Brookman from Kentucky, USA, to introduce today's speakers. Angela.
Thank you. Today we are focusing on food security, and both of our speakers will cover this issue. Julie is the club president from the Zonta Club of Fort Collins in Colorado, USA. She also serves as a co-chair of the chair of the District 12 Actions for Environment and Gender Equal Committee, co-chair of the Zonta USA Caucus Gender Equal Climate Change Committee, and a member of the international work group Zonta Says Now. Julie has worked in education and communications her entire career, starting in a media production company which spanned 10 years of live and recorded video productions. Her career as a nutritionist and wellness educator followed and continued until 2022, when she retired. Along the way, she gave birth to twin boys. One of her sons had severe food allergies, hence Julie created a food allergy education and safety support website, Allergy Free Table, and wrote 3 pocket guides for teachers, parents, and grandparents so they could manage food allergies anywhere. Now she spends her time outdoors with her family and dog, where she is not in front of the computer, focused on her many roles of Zonta Says Now and her club duties. Farida Lukmanjee, I apologize if I said that wrong, is a member of the Zonta Club of Newport Harbor in Colorado, or in California, USA. C words are bothering me today, I guess. Farida is originally from India and settled in Sri Lanka for 21 years. She has been a Zontian for 15 years and a foundation ambassador for 2 bienniums, and now is the advocacy chair of the Zonta Club of Newport Harbor. She has been instrumental in many projects concerning violence against women, education, health, and climate change effect on women and children. Farida is a corporate social responsible consultant who manages projects for corporations to have a sustainable impact on communities. Currently, she is working with the women in Sri Lanka, empowering the future of female farmers through the She Grows the World program that she founded. This provides women with sustainable farming techniques, which helps them to produce food and obtain an income. Please use the chat line if you have any questions. So now, Julie, please begin.
Thanks, everyone. So glad to see you all here today. It's a pleasure, and a pleasure to talk about food and water insecurity. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Food and water insecurity. So let's talk a little bit about how climate change worsens an existing problem. And as we all know, food and water insecurity is already happening around the globe, and for a long time in some areas of the globe, and it's worsening in many areas of the globe for many reasons. One is climate change. So what is food insecurity? This is a technical term, food insecurity. So here are the 3 areas, just a brief on food insecurity, but it's actually the condition of not having access to sufficient nutritious food to adequately eat the proper number of calories per day to meet one's basic needs consistently. They call that undernourished, and a lot of the UN research is about undernourishment with food insecurity and how they project it's going to worsen over time. Food insecurity affects the nutritional quality of food, the availability of food, and the stability of food systems. And we saw that during COVID. Food systems broke down with truckers, maybe processing and other things, so there wasn't as much food on the shelves. That is actually a glimpse of what they project will occur with worsening climate conditions. Some of the faces of food insecurity are chronic and long-term, which causes hunger and malnutrition, and we're seeing that expand in our world. And then there's transitory, temporary, and seasonal hunger causing undernourishment and can lead to malnutrition as well. This little chart was from 2020, which is right when when COVID and the pandemic was circling the world, and it talks about what food insecurity is versus hunger. So let's talk about more time closer to us of what's happening now. In 2022, they found between 691 and 783 million people worldwide faced a form of hunger, which would be undernourishment, chronic hunger, temporary hunger, seasonal hunger, with 238 million facing acute food insecurity, which means they don't have enough food available to have daily meals. The projection for 2030 is the scary part. Nearly 670 million will be chronically undernourished or food insecure. And that doesn't mean we just can't get a hold of food. It has to do with our choices of food, and it has to do with processing food, and it has to do with the quality of food, which is becoming less enriched with nutrients because of the quality of our soil. Here's a snapshot of two of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. The two that were important for today is one, no poverty, because food insecurity and water insecurity increase poverty. If the trend continues, as you can see, by 2030, 340 million women and girls will still live in extreme poverty. The stat that really shocked me was the one below that about how the progress to improve our climate needs to be 26 times faster than we are working right now to reach the no poverty goal. It's actually increasing because of conflict right now, also the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and now in Israel and Gaza. And there are a few others that I didn't mention. Zero hunger. Well, that's pretty much what we're talking about today, is let's empower women and figure out how we can achieve zero hunger. But 1 in 4 women and girls are expected to be moderately or severely food insecure by 2030. And there are statistics you can find online that show how women chronically receive less food globally than men do across the board. So what is water insecurity? We talked a little bit about food, and this is water. Water insecurity is also called water scarcity. So you may hear that term more frequently than you hear water insecurity. It means water, safe drinking and cooking water, is unavailable, and it's happening all over the globe due to the severe climate conditions and drought. That is a climate condition, but that's something that we may not think about. We think of the floods and the tornadoes and the blizzards and the other, fires, but drought is actually the biggest and most abundant issue that we're dealing with worldwide. So how is that impacted with climate change? Just so that everyone understands, 0.5% of all water on Earth is fresh water, available for drinking, cleaning, and cooking. Agriculture alone consumes 70% of fresh water usage globally. And a lot of people aren't aware that we have underground water called aquifers, and they do find new ones here and there. I'll give you an example of an aquifer and why it's what's happening. Agriculture pulls water out of aquifers, and this is happening globally. There's one very large one near Colorado, USA, where I live. It's called the Ogallala Aquifer. It is depleted by 40%. And they say it's going to take up to 6,000 years to fill it back up, which you see in the fourth square, how slow refilling is. And the more drought there is and other issues, you reduce your aquifer, and then it's not sustainable. So climate change, obviously, we all know this. I'm preaching to the choir. It increases water and food scarcity. So we have water, soil, and sun, 3 necessities for growing crops. But if we don't have any water, we don't have any food. We don't have safe water to use on our crops, we have no food. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Water is the gold, and food is the silver. And they're both precious metals, and they're both precious commodities, and they are becoming the most precious in the world. So as climate has changed, it disrupts precipitation patterns, and the water cycle causes the scarcity. It changes. It creates lack of water, like I was saying, drought, and it creates unsafe drinking water as a result of flooding. That is one of the reasons. So as you see on the third one, some of the issues that produce scarcity, and then it affects the quality of the soil. And I could probably do a whole talk on soil quality, but I won't. We'll do that another time. But just know that poor soil is very evident around the world, but there are ways to make that better. So here's what can be done. Water security actually needs to be at the forefront of climate policy. This is really important for Zontians to really advocate for water security and really look into what is happening, how is water being used, and how it's being wasted. Innovative financing for water resource management, that is key, because water is going to get more and more expensive, and we need to be able to find more resources or develop new ways, as you see in the third box, redevelop agricultural practices, because there are ways to do that to become water wise and actually to pull carbon out of the air, and that helps our climate, and then that brings in more rain. And then protect water from pollutants. That's a big advocacy deal, and I know there are some Zontians that have worked very, very seriously on this issue in their local communities, and it works legislatively. And reusing wastewater, how can your community do that? And protecting and creating sustainable use groundwater from the aquifers. Now, the next slide is about Farida. And let me tell you, she has been working so hard and so well with some farmers in Sri Lanka. She's going to tell you her story on some of the answers to food and water insecurity. So I'm going to throw it over to Farida Lukmanjee to tell you her story. I'm so happy you're here, Farida.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Farida Lukmanjee. Thank you very much, Julie. You have actually covered it up so beautifully. I cannot express like how beautifully you have, covered every aspect. And what you specified thing was you were talking about the hydrological cycle, which is getting messed up, which people do not understand, that the flow of the incoming water and the outflow is so much that we will have water scarcity very soon in the world. So it's basically we have to find ways to fix the hydrological cycle of the earth. So, okay, let me tell you a little bit how this whole thing started. When we say charity begins at home, okay? So I said, okay, let me start, because when Zonta kept on saying, Zonta says now, Zonta says now. So I said, okay, let's do it. So how do we do it? So enough of talking and let's start taking action. So I'm going to give you a little bit of, what I have done in the past 3 years.
All right.
Okay. So what I did is I was thinking, okay, what do we do? Everybody's talking about food scarcity. Everybody's talking about water. So this started from my 40th birthday. When I was turning 40, I thought, okay, what do I do interesting? I didn't want to do the normal parties and all. I have been doing it for a lifetime. So I came up with a project where I would give clean and safe drinking water to one village, which was a female-headed village in Sri Lanka. And that village was where there were no men because all the men were killed in the Sri Lankan war. Okay. So it started with that. So how does the clean water reach? Women have to walk for over 10 miles a day just to go and get 2 pots of clean drinking water. So for me, what I do is I get the pipelines to bring the clean drinking water right to where they are. So my project covers the infrastructure of getting the water pipelines to them. Then came the concept of she grows in the world. What happens in she grows in the world? Land owned by farmers, or land owned even by males or females. The land, whenever they grow anything, the women were never getting enough opportunity to reap the harvest of the hard work they have done. So what she grows in the world has started doing is we are giving them clean water. So I give them water pipelines where they have clean water for the fields and for their personal use, right? Second comes sustainable food resources. Sri Lanka is very rich in its soil. So all kinds of food can be grown. When we grow the food there, and now these farms are now farmed only by female farmers. We only get the males to come in for very hard jobs, but they are coming only on paid, like when they're temporarily paid. But the permanent workers are the female farmers. So basically, my project, which you can see is these are some of the seeds. Seeds is a very important part of farming. Unless you don't have good seeds, you won't have a good harvest. So the first slide that you see is where the women are all sorting out the seeds to have a better harvest for the next year. Okay, agricultural development and natural fertilizer sources. Now, when we are talking about the soil quality, no matter how good the soil is, we have to put fertilizers. Sri Lanka was importing fertilizers at a very high price. These women cannot afford these kind of fertilizers. So I found a gentleman by the name of Saman Hettiarachchi, who is a scientist in Sri Lanka and who has a patent to do the compost. So along with him and me, we created a small unit where we would prepare our own fertilizers. Can we go to the next slide, please, Carole? Okay, so this is now a little bit on the fertilizer part of it. So what you see with where these women are sitting and they are moving around, this is when the crop has already been harvested. You see this whole thing is taken and put into a mixture, and it is mixed with nitrogen to produce natural fertilizer. So what happens is the women don't have to pay for their own fertilizer. Once there's excess fertilizer, they can sell it, so they have means of income. And at the same time, what we also are promoting now, because if there are water bodies where the farms are, we are also promoting fish farming, so that we have 2 kinds of food coming, the crops as well as the proteins which you get from the fish. So fish farming, we will talk about it at a later stage. I have more information on that, but we will talk about it later. So Our project actually aligns with the Zonta Foundation mission to empower women worldwide and promote gender equality and Zonta's fight against climate change and its effects. So what we do is we do rotating crops. I think, Julie, you will understand exactly what I'm saying. When we do rotating crops, what happens is it does not take away everything from the soil with one crop. So what happens is 3 months of the year, they grow chilies. Once the chili crop is done, then they get money from that crop, which puts in money to put the brinjals or the aubergines, as you call it. Then the aubergines are grown. Then, but the main crop is basically the bananas, the peppers, and the mangoes. So while those are growing, we need something to sustain. So these women get sustained by the rotating crops, which do not spoil the quality of the soil that we have. We need to do this as a bigger group. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is this is a live project. It's working. It has worked, right? What we can duplicate this project in all parts of the world. The structure is ready. I have already had everything structured, knowing. So Southeast Asia, we are ready to go. And we can ask certain corporates to join with us in our fight against climate control, because nowadays a lot of corporates are talking about climate control. So let's club in along with Zonta and other corporates who would want to be with us in our fight against climate control. One thing which I want to just say is, by promoting natural fertilizers, the project will reduce the reliance on synthetic fertilizers and reduce environmental degradation. So by using the natural fertilizers, we are not harming the soil anymore. We are making the soil more richer and richer and richer. So let me tell you how these women handle everything. By the end of every crop, I have made a chain for them to go to the local market and go and sell their produce. When the local market buys their produce, the money that they get, now it is a chain which they follow. They buy their seeds, or now they are growing their own seeds. So it is a cycle. And in the third year of this project, we are more or less independent from anything. And it's a self-sustaining. Why I'm talking about self-sustaining is we have to stop the practice of keeping on giving. Do one project, make it good enough that it sustains itself. Okay. Then we also give, can we have the next slide, please? Yes. So with this project, I'm also giving a lot of training to the women. We have the experienced farmers who come and teach these women. Okay, as you can see on the screen, seeds are provided, fertilizer is provided, and so is the agricultural tools. We conserve water by using drip irrigation method. But what I mean by drip irrigation is there is a pipe going through where the water goes. Instead of it just no sprinklers, we have just small holes in the pipe so that there is little water going, because the excess water is anyway going to get wasted. So we have measured how much water is required and we give only that much water. So over 100,000 households can be benefited if we get more people to join into this She Grows in the World. So besides training, tools, resources, I'm also promoting sustainable and organic farming and prioritizing health and natural fertilizers, because with the natural fertilizers, we get a better crop. Sustainable farming. Sustainable farming is a concept where you do not have to depend on external sources at all given times for everything. Whatever you need, you should be able to produce it in your farm, from the seeds to the fertilizers to everything that is required, to the packaging, everything. Which my packaging is not yet sorted, but I'm working on it. Hopefully in my next presentation, I should be able to talk to you all about how the packaging of the finished goods is done. Can we just have the next one, please? Okay. So construction and rehabilitation of water sources that I've already spoken about. We are providing seeds, fertilizers, and agricultural tools. Provide women's empowerment program. I personally want to tell you how I have personally impacted 25 women. These 25 women in this last 2 years are now having their kids going to school. They are doing everything which they wanted to do because now they have that extra income. Plus, they do not have to wait for somebody to bring home the food or anything. Because if there is nothing which is cooked at home, they go to the farms, they take the raw, they'll take the raw bananas and they'll cook it as a vegetable. Okay, the raw pepper is cooked as a vegetable. The fruits which we get out of the harvest are used, or they can be, or they go and sell it. So I can assure you that the women who have been working in my farms are now so independent that they are running this whole thing on their own. I am here, I live in the United States now. They're remotely handling the project and they're doing it very, very well. I'll update you all very soon about it. Carole, can we have that video that I wanted to share? This video is basically done by a group of French journalists who came, and they have shot this on my fields and in my farms, just to give you what is the plight of women in Sri Lanka and how this was before the project, and now this is what is it now. You can just see this, please.
Once a week, Nazima goes shopping in the Maradana district of Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka. She and her husband earn less than 150 euros per month. It doesn't leave them with much choice.
கவலைத்தானே அதோட படிக்க வைக்கணும் இன்னமெல்லாம் சின்ன பிள்ளையிலே மூத்த மகனுக்கு 13 14 ரெண்டாவது மகனுக்கு 9 மூணாவதுக்கு 3.5.
Nazima shares this 3-bedroom flat with 2 other families. They even share a fridge. It's the only way of cutting their living costs.
படிக்க வைக்கிறேனால சல்லிதானே உன சும்மா படிக்கையில வயசுலாம் காலே போ எப்படி ஆகுமோ கொஞ்சம் காவிடு ஆக போற போக்கெல்லாம் கஷ்டமா தான் இருக்குது தலை தூக்க முடியாம.
Sri Lanka is currently facing a severe economic crisis, causing many people to go hungry. This country, with its population of 22 million people, is shouldering a horrendous amount of debt and isn't able to pay it back. Ever since the value of the rupee dropped a year ago, inflation has hit record heights. Whether it was for fuel, medication or food, prices had increased by nearly 60% by last December. Manning Market, the capital's largest marketplace, has seen a decline in footfall. Prices have shot up uncontrollably. They change daily, depending on supply and market rates. Tomatoes have tripled in price. Carrots and beans have doubled. Sellers are struggling to shift their stock. Before the crisis, they were used to selling 25 tons of produce. Today, they are barely managing to get half of that.
උගක් බලපාලා තියෙනවා සුළු පරිමාණ ගොවියෝගේ වගා ඔක්කොම නැවතිලා තියෙනවා.
Agriculture makes up a significant part of the country's economy. Productivity has sunk by 50% over the course of a year. Vegetables are often in short supply. Potatoes sometimes need to be imported from India or China. Other products such as manioc are now scarcely available. The lack of food threatens the poorest sectors of the country's population the most.
We had a crop and food security assessment mission run by FAO and World Food Program, which found that about 66,000 people were actually suffering from severe hunger situation, and about 6.3 million people in the country were facing likely hunger situations. So it is a large number. It's nearly 1/3 of the country's population which is susceptible to hunger today. Now, these are mostly poor people in the rural areas and also urban poor. People who were working with small and medium enterprises who lost their jobs, people who were daily wage workers who are suffering on account of the rising prices and the economic crisis in the country. Of course, the smallholder farmers, amongst which women and children also have suffered a lot.
It's lunchtime in Kirowanaganga, a village in the southwest of the country. Since the summer, they've been running a community kitchen in the village hall. Around 60 people aged between 5 and 80 years old are waiting for food. Every day at the same time, they come here for a free meal. For most of them, it will be their only meal of the day.
They do not have the 3 meals habit. With the current precision, even having 1 meal also a challenge. So currently what we are doing is with the community kitchen, we give them a meal for the lunch. So they survive from the lunch meal the whole day most of the times. We do have the malnutrition very high in these areas. So we are concerned about a fully fledged nutritious meal. And today actually we provided 4 vegetables and animal protein. So we serve them chicken.
In the past 6 months, 9 community kitchens have opened to tackle famine in the country's poorest regions. There are plans to open at least 3 more in the coming weeks, primarily in Colombo. They are organized by members of the NGO Ceylon Youth Movement, which supports disadvantaged children. Each day, their 550 helpers provide around 800 meals. Children are served first. Shalomi is 5 years old and doesn't leave a scrap on her plate. Her parents work on a tea plantation. They send her to the community kitchen every day so she can be well fed.
இதுங்களை கிளாஸ் போகணும் ரெண்டுமே கிளம்பையில 3 நாளைக்கு போகணும். அதுக்கு ஒரு 2 ஹவருக்கு 200 ரூபா நாங்கள் காசு கட்டணும் 2 ஹவர் பந்திக்கு. அதனால தான் முக்கியமே நாங்கள் இந்த சாப்பாடை பற்றி அவ்வளோ தூரம் நினைக்கல. இது நல்லா படிச்சிருக்கு.
They live off just £4.50 per day. That isn't enough to feed the whole family.
ஒரு நாளுன்ட்டுல நீ ஒரு நாளுன்ட்டுனா அப்படி இல்லை.
நானா நினைக்கிறேன் பிள்ளைங்களை படிக்க வச்ச பிறகு பிள்ளைங்க முடிவு மாதிரி ஒரு அந்த பிள்ளைங்க ஒரு தட்டுக்கு வரும் தானே படிக்க வச்சா நம்ம மாதிரியே கஷ்டப்படாங்க தானே பிள்ளைங்க.
என்னதான் பண்ணி இப்படியே இருக்குது. ஆனால் இங்கே இருக்கிறவங்க முக்கியமே வெளியூருக்கு தான் போகிறாங்க. நீ பொம்பளை பொண்ணு விட்டும் போகலாத்தானே என்னத்தான் செய்ய.
According to the Sri Lankan government, 300,000 citizens have left the country since the beginning of the crisis. Most of them had no choice but to emigrate.
Ladies, I want to introduce somebody who is my partner in Africa. So I have partnered with Betty. Betty, are you there? So she is heading a whole female farming group in Africa. And she and me are now getting together to promote more and better means of, so I will be sending the seeds from Sri Lanka to Betty in Africa, and Africa will grow. And the same way I'm trying to do international trade between countries where there is a need and a demand. So Betty is here with us today, and she heads a whole group of female farmers in Kenya.
Hi, Zonta. I am Betty, and we've partnered with Farida. Farida has been teaching us how to conserve good soil, so the production of crops. We are currently doing chilies and onions and experiencing exactly the same problems she described there before. The prices of seeds being very expensive. So she's able to help us with water conservation and soil saving. So we are looking towards this journey with her for longer, because we have touched more than 250 families, stretching from the northern Kenya, where it's semi-arid, to Kajiado, which is feeding most of Nairobi, and Laikipia area, which is very close to the mountains, and at the same time, you have the equator stretching right there. So during the drought season, you can really feel the heat. But with the solutions that she's given us in water, we are able to conserve water for the growing seasons, from season to season. And if we get further support, we are able to continue growing trees and foodstuff at the same time, because they share the same amount of water. In Africa, water is a luxury. If I shower with the water, I don't just dispose of that water. The food crops do not feel the pressure of the soap, so they can share the same water. And so does the tree, that tomorrow will be somebody else's shade, or it will bring up the fruits that people can take to the market, and feedlots for the livestock around the home. So you have a win-win situation. And we're looking further for deeper cooperation with Zonta. Thank you very much, Farida, for your support.
So thank you for being here today.
That's excellent. Thank you so much to Julie and Farida for sharing the work, and to Betty for giving the perspective of what's been going on in Africa. I'm going to hand over quickly to Karen now to take us into our discussion in the breakout rooms, and I'll set things up for the breakout room. Okay.
Before you do, Carol, there was one question in the chat.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Florence Fisher-Herber says, how do you get the money to launch these projects?
Hello? Yeah, that's for me, right?
Yes.
Okay. At the moment, whatever I have done it on my personal level. So like right now, I am going to launch a campaign where I am going to ask all the corporates. As I already mentioned before, that a lot of the corporates like Coca-Cola, they do projects in water. Pepsi, they do projects in water. You get it? So we have to start approaching people, like for example, if I go to Quaker Oats, they will want to do they will want to do a CSR. When I talk about a CSR, is a corporate social responsibility project. They want to do, all corporates have their area of what they want to spend money of their charity money, or the money that they want to do as a responsibility project. So we can tap these corporates and and align our goals with them, so that, in my words, we say piggyback with them, so that we can move forward faster. So we have to now look at getting a network of corporates who can sponsor these projects. And the community kitchen, which you all saw on the video, is also another aspect which we can look at, where we can get community kitchens set up, because that setup is relatively more easier than doing the whole thing. So if we can't do the whole thing on our own, then even if we can get some corporates to facilitate the community kitchens, that will be some sort of a solution at the moment, but that will be a band-aid. Hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. That was really amazingly impressive. what you taught us, Julie and Farida, and I'm so well overwhelmed by also your connection with Kenya and with Betty and her projects. It's so great. Looks very good, and I think we should deepen it. Now in our breakout sessions, we like to focus, bearing that in mind, what you taught us already. We want to focus on 3 questions that we have listed here on the agenda. And as always, we want to focus on the situation of women and girls and find out what kind of action might be needed. First, how have extreme weather events impacted your local supply chain? How vulnerable is your water supply? That's the second question, which also goes to Europe, for instance, as well. And how do the impacts of extreme weather events and vulnerable water supplies make life more difficult for poor and displaced persons? So Carole will put us into breakout rooms, and we will have around 20 minutes to discuss these issues. Over to you, Carole. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we should now find the key points from each of our groups. And in my group, it was really interesting. We had Farida with us, but our Zonta friends from Toronto and as well from Ottawa, Judith Ainsworth from Ottawa, and from Toronto, Debbie Field, first made clear, of course, that we are very wealthy nations and we don't have, it's still not such a huge problem felt by everybody with the food insecurity. But at the same time, they see that we believe that our resources are for granted, like, for instance, the lakes in Toronto. And they see also that the urbanization is a real huge problem, which also is a real huge problem in Germany, of course, when soil is getting lost. And and that we need creative ways to protect farmland. And we found a little bit that what Farida and Betty are doing could be also an example, because they are tackling with, or they are making this with organic seeds, for instance. So we can learn a little bit from them on the one hand, and on the other hand, we can also take some action. And that's what Farida said, and I loved the idea of being very practical, looking around in your communities and looking at female farming projects and stuff like that, organic projects, to enhance them, to support them. And so look right in front of you, in your neighborhood, what you can do. And yeah, and then the last question I had, and then I stop it here, make a stop here, was about going together with big corporations, because yeah, we always have to keep in mind that there's a lot of greenwashing as well. So and I suggested that well, to do something very practical in your community and to give support to the female farming projects does not mean not to ask also the companies what they are really doing, if they are going to support us. Just yeah, to learn a little bit about all those things that could be very, very helpful. But anyways, yeah, so that was the state of our discussion. Over to, well, Pia, who wants to tell? Yeah, Pia?
Okay. Yep. Hello. Yeah, we were from wealthy countries also, all of us, and Europe, and Helen from New Zealand, and they experienced last winter the hurricanes, and really had a taste on lackage in food supply, and Helen shared that yeah, they have a lot of food inland, but everything has increased so much in price, so it affected the economy so much, these things, to have to have the supplying and the cost of living increased. And then we turn on to water and other things, and then we talk about we mentioned the elephant in the room, really, that we might talk more about. That is a child limitation, because we are too many on this planet, that also affect climate change, of course, and that's a problem with the food and water. And that we produce too much waste in the Western countries, in the rich countries, that that's something we can talk more about in Zonta. Yeah, that was about it from our group.
Thank you so much, Pia. So I'd like to ask Bobby.
Okay, I was in room 4, and I got to say I got kicked out at the beginning, so I came back in. Everybody was talking already, but I will say we had a Zonchan from Manila who was saying that it's always raining, and I guess the rice can be washed away by this intense amount of rain. However, she also said later that the Philippines has a climate change act, and the Department of Agriculture actually gives away seeds so that and encourages families to grow their own. That was Marie, I think, who said that. So thank you, Marie. Hasna was talking about basically all the issues of climate change in Bangladesh, and saying that the water scarcity definitely affects the female-headed households who are more vulnerable. And she said we need to become women warriors. We need to be more action-oriented, and perhaps even a new slogan we might consider, something like "Stop this climate change," or something more action, more about taking action. She talked about the warming of the seas creating new diseases that we have to deal with from climate change. And then Bonnie from the US talked about the fact that she has worked with the Department of Energy and the Department of Agriculture, and they are a resource, and that perhaps she can help us get in touch with those to take some action in the United States. Because I asked essentially, well, can you go to your governments and can the governments actually do anything depending on your country? And certainly in the United States, I think that is true. We just had started to talk about whether the lack of food and water makes it is worse for poor women. And we were just getting started on that when we got cut off. So we have a lot more to talk about in the future.
Thank you so much, Bobby. So, well, I turn it over to Angela.
Yes, in our group, we had Luxembourg, Belgium, Uganda, and 3 from America, and a pop-in from Australia. And one of the things that everyone shared is the cycle of fires to rain, to floods, to unemployment, to increased homelessness, to increased lack of food in the food banks. And so everyone's dealing with that cycle, and anything we can do to break up that cycle, will be life-saving and will have great impact. On the water, in the US, we talked quite a bit about the poor infrastructure, and how long, if a water main breaks, you're out of water for your area for 3, 4, 5 weeks while it's getting replaced. So you're on boil warnings, and so looking at infrastructure. Carole brought in how, again, the infrastructure, if the train track gets taken out, and that's the main way that food gets transported in and out, that you're in a desert all by yourself because it can't get in. And so being able to be prepared for the infrastructure is a piece that we need to keep our eyes and ears open to. So, and on that, I think I'm going to pass it to Julie for her group.
Thank you, Angela. Thanks, everyone. Boy, lots of great discussion. We had a great discussion. It's never long enough. So our contributors were Marinette, Dee, Mafusa, Lucette, Gunvor, and Anastasia. And we had commonality in our concern and our knowledge. We had differences in our geographic location. So some of us live in areas where the water supply issue and the food supply issue isn't as great as other places. Mufasa and Anastasia both talked about water supply and food scarcity and the pricing of foods, how flooding has ruined rural farming and the food prices get to be greater and greater, and the amount of food is less and less. Both of them were talking about water too, in two different ways. So Mufasa was saying that in her neck of the woods in Bangladesh area, the coastal communities have a lot of water from the ocean, which is filled with salt, and they don't have enough water that is salt-free, that's fresh drinking water. Whereas in Anastasia's community, they're working on bringing, like Farida's doing in Sri Lanka, bringing the large containers in and filling them so communities have water right there in their villages, rather than having the women go so far to get water, which, as we all know, reduces violence and gives women and girls a greater chance to have education and do other things. Marinette is near Geneva, and she was talking about how there's becoming a water issue in her community, and that she felt like water should be a resource for all and not paid for. I didn't really get to speak on that, but some of us, especially in the US, we pay for our water and it gets more and more expensive. So Carole's nodding yes, in Australia too. So that's a difference between our different communities. But I think the bottom line was we all felt like this is kind of scary stuff and we need to do something about it. And each village and each community has different needs, and how can we help? So that's it from us. Thank you to all of those who talked today and were in my room.
Thank you so much, Julie. Did we forget anybody? No, yes, it's Carole. You had also a group, right?
No, I just popped in.
Okay, you're just opting. Okay, so then I'd like to hand it over to you now, if we didn't forget anybody, to tell us more about the results of our member survey.
Will do. Okay, well, the Zonta Says Now to Gender Equal Climate Action Members Survey was one of the 3 surveys undertaken in 2023. The others were for club presidents and for district governors. The surveys were designed to provide a baseline of information on Zontians' understanding of climate justice, any sustainability actions they were taking, and to elicit their feedback on Zonta Says Now. Responses were received in August and September this year. A total of 611 Zontians responded to the survey, with 95% being club members. Responses were received from 14 Z Club members, 11 supporting members, and 4 Golden Z Club members. Responses were received from all of the districts, with over half of the responses from Australia and the USA. Only 10 countries had more than 10 responses, so it meant the results were skewed a bit geographically. More than 3/4 of the responses were from members aged 60 or over. And over 90% of Zontians were concerned or very concerned about climate change. 1/3 of respondees were not convinced that climate change was a gender equality issue. 1/4 had not read the statement on climate change, and 1/3 had not visited the Zonta Says Now web pages on the Zonta International website. So we've got many opportunities for improvement. Just under half of respondees had been impacted by an extreme weather event. Of these, half had experienced extreme heat, and over 1/3 had experienced drought or storms or floods. Over 60% did not have an emergency evacuation plan for their home. So this provides another opportunity for education. Overall, Zontians were comfortable talking about extreme weather events and gender equality. However, nearly a quarter were uncomfortable talking to strangers, and between 10 to 15% were uncomfortable talking to community leaders, politicians, work colleagues, families, and friends. So here's another opportunity where we can support Zontians. Many Zontians express difficulties avoiding plastic, using public transport, car sharing, or cycling and walking. There may be opportunities to educate and advocate in these areas to make it easier to do so. More information may also be required to educate Zontians about green banking, green investments, green gifts, and donating to the foundation. Over a quarter of Zontians indicated they were also members of other gender equality or climate-related organisations. These 167 Zontians belong to over 200 other organisations. Zontians reach so many areas. There were 611 responses, and the last question provided the opportunity for comment and feedback. About 40% of respondees provided some comments, with 231 providing positive feedback and 20 sharing their concerns. 144 provided additional information and ideas, which have been grouped into themes on the following slides. It became clear that we need to focus on Zonta's mission and clarify our messaging. Many do not understand the links between increasing extreme weather events and rising gender inequality. Some were concerned that we were becoming an environmental organisation and were moving away from gender equality. Others shared their difficulties in spreading the message when it was a low priority in their country or the topic was politically sensitive. Members were keen to learn more about many topics, ranging from court cases, switching to electricity, sustainable transport, recycling, evacuation planning, composting, and education on plastics. They want clear statistics and current research. They want to know how climate impacts women in developed countries and how we can influence government policy. There were many ideas about raising awareness through scholarships, mentoring, or events such as a Women's Expo. Many advocacy themes were suggested, ranging from women's safety and homelessness to having more women in STEM and research, working with governments, having more women in leadership, and projects for schools and rural communities. Advocating for more sustainable policies was a popular theme, especially around food, with food security, clean water, agriculture, and meat high on the list. Consumer issues such as supermarket packaging, fast fashion, and sustainable travel were also on the radar. From an environmental perspective, wetland management, tree planting, and urban tree planting to create cooler landscapes were also suggested. It soon became clear that we need a Zonta Says Now communication campaign with many comments around using more materials to raise awareness and having more "what can I do now" actions on the website. Social media was seen as a way to appeal to more young women, although we must ensure that all materials are well informed and we don't lecture to people. Some Zontians indicated that they do not look at the website and need other forms of communication, with suggestions including face-to-face meetings, activities such as guest speakers, and discussing Zonta Says Now at meetings. Zontians felt that as an organisation, we should lead by example and be as sustainable as we can. Concerns were raised about the plastic envelopes for the Zontian magazine, and more information was requested about the cost and impact of meetings and materials. Travelling to convention also generated a few concerns. We're reminded that for many Zontians, English is not their first language, and translations must be considered when developing materials. A few respondees had found it hard to access the Zonta Says Now web pages, and one had commented that Zooms only addressed Asia and Africa, though it's not clear which Zooms were being referred to. It was suggested that there be a think tank for European districts, and we provide questions for think tank meetings ahead of time, which we did for this meeting. And finally, collaboration was seen as a way of raising awareness, as too few people know about Zonta. And given that so many Zontians are also members of other organisations, this may be quite easy to do. We're setting up an alliance team to explore this issue further. So what's the next steps? Firstly, we're sharing our findings with the Zonta International headquarters and board. We'll develop and implement a Zonta Says Now communication campaign, and this may include providing materials or courses to train district governors and lieutenant governors and potentially advocacy chairs. We've created a few small Zonta Says Now teams to promote the virtual art gallery, develop social media messages, and investigate potential alliances with like-minded organisations. We'll create more small teams as required to develop and implement the communications campaign. We aim to repeat the survey in April 2024 and share the results at the International Convention in Brisbane. So the information gained in the survey has been invaluable, and we give our thanks to the members who took the time to share their views. We can only improve with your feedback, and we look forward to hearing from more Zontians next year. So before we just go, there's just a couple of things I want to raise with you. The Global Alliance for Food Security and the World Bank Group have developed a global food and nutrition security dashboard. There is a short video on it, but I don't think we have time today to show you, but I'll put it in the show notes, as they say, move forward. So finally today, please consider donating to the foundation and the endowment fund whenever you can. Our projects to help women and girls cannot happen without your donations. So this month, why not donate to the endowment fund the cost of a family meal? Every little helps. So our next meeting will be on Sunday, the 19th of November, from 12 to 1:30 UTC. Please register for the meeting now so that the date will be in your calendar. The slides and video from today's meeting will be uploaded to the Intercontinental think tank page on District 23's Zonta Says Now website in the next couple of days. So thank you again to Julie and Farida for your presentation, and to all of you for the great discussions and for the team in hosting today's event. Remember that through our gender equal climate action, we are building a better world for women and girls. So please check out our Zonta Says Now resources on the websites and start creating your artwork for the virtual art gallery. And if you've got any questions, please email me at info@zontasaysnow.org.au. So until next month, keep breathing, keep smiling, and have fun. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.